Deputy Prime Minister, welcome to Nottingham. We feel honoured and privileged that you have chosen Nottingham to be one of the stops on your summer tour. We're even more privileged to know that actually this is your final stop on the summer tour. So we will be the last of the great programme this summer. Now many of you here tonight are entrepreneurs, are professionals and business leaders, and I'm sure you'll be keen to hear what the Deputy Prime Minister has to say. And I'm sure you will also be very keen on asking questions, and you'll have plenty of time to both hear Nick and ask questions. But you'll also be equally excited to hear that we're going to have a raffle. And we're also going to have an auction. So we have got something very special for you tonight. Apart from a cricket bat, which has been signed by the Notts cricket team, we've also got the House of Commons malt whisky, which has been signed by Nick as well. So these are all on offer, so make sure you treat the people who come round to talk to you about these things with a great deal of love and respect. And I'm going to point them out right now. Can I ask Julia to put her hand up? This is Julia Cambridge. Julia is going to be talking to you, her and her team, about some of the raffle prizes, so she'll be popping around. Is Alison around? Alison's at the end. Put your hand up, Alison. Alison is the events organiser, and she's been the force behind making all this happen. Now, my name is Isan Ghazni, and I'm the chair of the Nottingham City Party. I'll be acting as host tonight for the whole evening, and I'll be facilitating proceedings. So without further ado, please enjoy your meal, keep networking, and have a pleasant evening. We'll be talking to you shortly. Thank you.
First of all, I would like to start off by thanking Isan as chairman of the Nottinghamshire Liberal Democrats and his magnificent team for the third time in as many months putting on such a fantastic evening. I don't know where he finds the talent from, but I'd like to think that sooner or later some of them might move to Chesterfield. Now, not only are we proud to receive the Deputy Prime Minister in the East Midlands, of course we give him the warmest of welcomes, and also say to him, or should I say thank him, for taking us into government. Some of us have been knocking on doors for as many as 50 years and maybe more, trying to get Liberal Democrat policies into government, and thanks to the bravery of Nick Clegg, now the Deputy Prime Minister, we can walk into the next election, hopefully by 2015, because fixed term parliaments was a Liberal policy, and that gives us the time to be able to say, we've just started turning it around. Now don't mess it up for the second time in a short period. Nick, thank you very much for coming to the East Midlands. We support everything that you do, and we admire your bravery. And now we look forward to your speech. Ladies and gentlemen, a big hand please for the Deputy Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Nick Clegg.
Thank you, Tony, for that very generous introduction. I don't think any of you, I suspect very few of you will know that I think I referred to earlier to the fact that my first campaigning office ever was the small office below Topper's hairdressers just across the bridge, just off Trent Bridge there. But I think one of the first people I went to visit to seek support in the selection contest to be selected as the lead candidate on our Euro list for the 2000 Euro elections in East Midlands was it 2000? 99. Was Tony. Because every time when I asked anyone, you know, who's who's the power of the land in East Midlands? Who's Tony Rogers? So I went and paid homage to Tony. I have no idea what on earth he thought about me, or whether he then decided to support me or not, but I remember Tony giving me absolute masterclass in how we should campaign as a party, and many of your pearls of wisdom then have still remained with me today. It's wonderful to see you in such good form here this evening. Look, I stand between you and our pudding. In fact, I stand between myself and my own pudding, and I like pudding, so I'm not going to speak for very long, but I will make just some comments, I think, about the economy. That's what I was invited to do. And then obviously take some questions and comments from you. First, the bad news. The bad news is that what happened in 2008 was very, very serious indeed, much more serious than any normal recession, and has done very considerable damage to the British economy. And it's going to take longer than we thought for the British economy to heal. I think it's taken us as a country some years to quite get our heads around the enormity of what happened in 2008. And it was like a socking great big cardiac arrest right at the heart of our financial system. And like a heart that pumps blood around a body, a banking system which can't pump money around an economy means that the economy is in serious trouble. And what we witnessed was, of course, shameless short-termism, greed, and an over-leveraged business model take hold in all of our major banks. The last government, I think, has a very heavy responsibility for allowing that to happen. And by the way, every time Ed Balls turns up on the television and tries to tell you about what to do with the economy, don't forget that this was the man who went on the prawn cocktail charm offensive on behalf of Labour, lauding the fact, when we were warning him otherwise, that it was great that there wasn't enough that the regulation was so light touch in the City of London. It was Labour that let the banks get away with blue murder. And the consequences are very profound. The latest estimates are that the British economy will be a full 11% smaller, poorer, weaker, come 2016-17 than it would have been if 2008 had not happened. I mean, very candidly, we're like an oversized Iceland. We're an open economy with an oversized banking sector which has blown up in our face. The liabilities of the whole British banking system when we came into government were 5 times the size of the whole British economy. It's very difficult to understand what that means. You know, it's like having a great big sort of powder keg of rubbish that you're trying to kind of diffuse in the banking system. If you get that wrong, it can basically swamp the whole British economy 5 times over. And I give that rather depressing account because I think there are still people around who seem to think that we can wave a magic wand. You know, on the right, people say, oh, we need to deregulate more and by next Tuesday there'll be growth and everything will be fine. The left say, all we need to do is borrow a little bit more money and everything will be fine. But a little bit of deregulation, a little bit of extra borrowing isn't going to suddenly make the banks healthy again. Isn't going to lift the shadow of the crisis of the Eurozone. Isn't going to lift credit card debts and mortgage debt on millions of British consumers. There are some profound issues in our British economy that need to work themselves out as the economy heals. So that's the bad news. The good news is I genuinely think we're doing exactly, more or less, exactly the right thing to get us back to full health as a nation, as an economy again. And crucially, not simply to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, not simply to repeat the mistakes of the past, but to rebuild a new British economy on new foundations, less dependent on households mortgaged up to the gills, less dependent on politicians spending money they haven't got, less dependent on banks borrowing money that they shouldn't and lending money that they shouldn't, less dependent on services, less dependent only on growth in 1 square mile in the City of London, but a more balanced form. Manufacturing at this table here, which supports manufacturing just as much as we support the City of London, that invests in transport infrastructure, rail infrastructure, road infrastructure, the green energy infrastructure, housing infrastructure, which has been starved of cash for so long, that invests in skills, not just higher education skills, but values vocational skills, just as much as we value a university degree. For far too long, we've had this punitive, hidden snobbery that says the only good thing to do once you leave school is go to university. They wouldn't say that in Denmark or Germany or the Netherlands, some of the most successful economies in the world. They'd say no. We need to do exactly what we're doing, is build university technical colleges, expand apprenticeships on a scale that hasn't happened in the last 20 years. So a whole range of things to do. What are the telltale signs of what we're doing? Well, we're balancing the books. That's what the big argument is about in the pages of the newspaper every single day. Of course you have to. You have to. We can argue about the exact pace. You can argue about whether you slow it down and accelerate it a bit. But don't believe any of this nonsense that somehow we can sort of turn our backs on our national debts and deficits. There's nothing progressive or fair, by the way, of shrugging our shoulders as a generation and saying to our children and our grandchildren, oh, you clean up the mess, we can't be bothered to do it. You wouldn't do that, would you, as a parent? Rack up debts, and then say, oh, I can't be bothered. Hey, son, daughter, can you do it for me, please? We can't visit the failings of our generation on our children and our grandchildren. I find it amazing when I hear people on the left saying it's somehow progressive to just sort of duck the challenge of trying to clear the decks for the next generation. There's nothing progressive about that. Of course there's an argument about the pace. And on that I want to reassure you that the kind of stereotype that is being imposed upon us by our critics, that somehow Liberal Democrats are being gazumped by these sort of crazy right-wing neoconservative nutters who want to destroy the state and turn the clock back to the 80s or the 30s. There's not a single shred of evidence or fact to support that claim. In fact, public spending as a proportion of our nation's wealth at the end of all these drastic cuts at the end of this Parliament will be 42% of our GDP. That is higher than at any time between 1995 and when the banks went bust in 2008. And far from being dogmatic or draconian, and we discovered last autumn that this was all taking much longer than we'd hoped, we didn't cut more, we said, okay, we're going to take longer to do it. 2/3 of all of the fiscal tightening, as they say it in the jargon, that we are implementing were announced already by Labour. Yeah, we added to it because we felt we needed to show very clearly we're going to get on top of this problem. And you have to get on top of this problem, because if you don't get on top of it, not only is it unfair to our kids and our grandchildren, crucially, if you don't get on top of it, the Bank of England can't keep interest rates low, can't introduce £80 billion through a funding for lending scheme as it's announced this summer, in cheap credit, which hopefully will make its way to households and businesses in the country, can't spend basically £375 billion through so-called quantitative easing, pumping that money into the economy. For those economists amongst you, we took a decision in 2010 to be tight on the public finances, a tight fiscal policy, so that we could have a loose monetary policy to support demand. And I think that judgment was basically right. We can tweak it here and there. We have. We can be pragmatic, as we should. But that basic judgment was right when you're dealing with the largest peacetime deficit ever, when we had the bond markets breathing down our necks in 2010. So that's one thing. You just need to do that. You need to sort out the banks, split them up, split their retail and investment operations, invent new banks which can compete with the old clapped out ones as we are, perhaps invent a new state bank altogether, a business lending bank, which Vince Cable and I are working on right now. So you've got a deficit, sort of bank, you've got to get money into infrastructure. We don't have much money publicly, so we're trying to find new ways of getting money into housing, into green energy, into transport, into roads, into rail. We announced just last week a £10 billion guarantee to housing associations and house builders in Nottinghamshire and across the country to get them building social and affordable homes. We announced a £9 billion programme of investment, the largest railway network investment since the Victorian era, just before the summer. We're legislating this very week for a new scheme, never been done before, where the Treasury basically says here's £40 billion worth of guarantees. It's like a sort of financial insurance policy to people who want to invest in roads and infrastructure to get that going. We've created the Green Investment Bank, the first of its kind anywhere in the world, £3 billion of your money, public money, to get private money into the green energy infrastructure that we so passionately believe in as Lib Dems. Because this idea that somehow going green and going for growth is a contradiction is an utter nonsense. In fact, the green economy is one of the fastest growing sectors in our economy. So deficit, banks, infrastructure, skills. As I said before, expanding apprenticeships at a pace never seen before in the last 20, 30 years in this country. We're delivering 250,000 more apprenticeships than Labour had planned under the previous government. We're inventing new things like university technical colleges, bringing businesses and apprenticeships and colleges together. I think we need to do more of that. As I said earlier, I think we need to do more to raise the esteem of the FE sector and vocational education. And then there's the crucial issue of remaining open to the outside world. Not pulling up the drawbridge, not turning their backs on the outside world. There's always a risk when people are frightened, when they're anxious, when they're insecure. There's a lot of insecurity about that. People turn to populists, they turn to either extremes of left and right. We can see that a lot happening in parts of Europe, and pulling the drawbridge up. We're keeping our economy, which is an open trading economy, as open as possible, and all the while doing that whilst also increasing the incentive to work. And that's where our signature tune policy of raising the point at which you start paying income tax to £10,000 is so important. If you do that combined with sensible welfare reforms, you dramatically increase the incentive to work. Because people keep more of the money that they earn on low pay and on middle incomes. And that, by the way, economically makes sense as well. Because people on low pay get money back in their pockets. And as you know, we'll be taking 2 million people on low pay out of paying any income tax altogether when the allowance is raised by the biggest amount ever as of next April. It's those people who tend to spend the money on the high street as well. So those are the kind of components we're following. Have we got every detail right? No. Have we got every announcement right? No. Are there more things we could do? Sure. Could we tweak it here? Could we tweak it there? Yes. But I want to really impress upon you that you, every single one of you who've stuck with the Liberal Democrats as we go on this incredibly difficult journey as a party, from a party of perennial opposition into a party taking difficult decisions in government, that you're also part of an extraordinarily important journey as we recover from this once-in-a-generation shock that happened in 2008. And us holding our nerve and doing the right thing and not flinching and not bailing out and not wimping out isn't just for our benefit politically. I genuinely believe it's right for the country. Halfway up a mountain, you don't suddenly turn around. You don't suddenly say, oh, I can't be bothered. I'll go back down again. You've got to see it through. And if we see it through, I genuinely believe not only will the country be stronger, more prosperous, more sustainable, more balanced, more green and fairer, but here's the thing, I also genuinely believe that many, many reasonably minded Britons will reward us politically as well. They might say, I didn't like what you did on this, I didn't know what you did on that. But if they feel that we've pointed the country in the right direction, and they feel more optimistic for their children, more optimistic about their futures because of all the difficult things we've done, I also so happen to think that they will fairly reward us politically as well. So good economics is good politics. Doing the right thing is politically sensible as well. And I'm immensely proud that I lead a party which has proved to be so much more determined and resilient and graceful under fire than so many of our critics allow. Thank you very much.